Welcome to the second episode of our podcast. I'm Kaycie and I'm joined by Zoe, Kenya, and Dom. In this episode, we will be discussing the different Abrahamic religions and how they understand nature. We will be looking at their origin stories and how it shaped their view of nature and the large impact Christians could have on the environment.
To start us off, what are the Abrahamic religions?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I wrote that as Kenya.
No.
The main Abrahamic religions are Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. All Abrahamic religions are defined by their belief in one God, or more specifically, the God of Abraham. Christianity believes that Jesus is Son of God, or more simply put, God himself. Judaism and Islam both believe that Jesus was a prophet but not actually God, and that God has not come down in any kind of human form yet. They have many, but their main prophets were Moses and Muhammad, respectively.
What I think is interesting is that although they have key differences, both Christian and Jewish followers believe in the same origin story, but what about Islam?
Well, the Jewish and Christians both use a collective of scriptures or books known as the Old Testament that includes Genesis, which explains how the world and humans were made, whereas Islam has the Quran, which includes some books from the Old Testament, but has a different writing about their God, or in this case, Allah, and their creation story.
Yes, and although they have different writings in Islam, the general story remains closely related to that of the Old Testament. Both stories say how God, or Allah, created the universe and earth in 6 days, and on the seventh day, God rested, but Allah did not rest because creation is an ongoing process.
I wonder if they all believed in Adam and Eve as the first humans to exist.
Actually, they do all technically believe in Adam and Eve, but the Quran never directly mentions Eve. They instead refer to Hawa, which translates to Eve.
Okay, so what do their beliefs have to do with nature?
Well, in the first book of the Old Testament, Genesis, chapter 1, verse 28, God says, "Be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth. Subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every other living thing that moveth upon the earth."
So God actually tells humankind that the earth is full of resources for them to own and control.
Yes, in the scripture of Christianity and Judaism, God tells them to take control over everything on earth, which at the same time would be all of nature. It's known as the dominion theory. In an introduction to religion and ecology, Branton explains how it creates a hierarchy in which God is the highest level, humans the second, and earth is the lowest.
What about in Islam? Does the Quran mention anything similar like it does with Adam and Eve?
Actually, the Quran does say in Surah Sa'd 71-72, when your Rabb once said to the forces in the universe, "Indeed, I'm going to form human from clay. Submit to him right away when I have proportioned him and given him knowledge." It's interesting because in the Old Testament, God tells humans that they're superior, whereas in the Quran, Allah tells everything else to listen to humans. Islam teaching also focus on the responsibility for earth and caring for it.
So, in summary, in Abrahamic religions, followers are taught that the world is either a resource to be used or something to be controlled and maintained.
No. So the big question is, how does knowing the creation stories of Abrahamic religions help understand the relationship people have now with nature?
Well, I think it's important to look at people's beliefs because it's what drives how people think and act in different scenarios or situations. Religion shapes people's ethics and morals, which is the core of who people are. The religious scriptures played a huge role in how we see our environment. Even hundreds of years after the belief was first founded, it still has a major influence.
And with climate change being a growing issue, it's important to see how people are viewing it and why they would be viewing it that way. Christianity is the largest religion in the world, and Islam is the third largest. The impact that the followers of these religions have on the world and how we approach issues is massive.
Another thing is that world leaders are religious and most are Christian or Islam. When climate change was found to be an ongoing problem, the United States had an evangelical Christian president, George W. Bush. Cynthia Branton actually says, in an introduction to religion and ecology, that perhaps evangelical involvement could influence him in government decision-making regarding climate change.
I actually read in Towards a Psychology of Religion and the Environment that surveys of Americans consistently find that religious people, and particularly Christians, are less likely to believe in anthropogenic climate change or care about its consequences. This goes back to the dominion theory, where in Abrahamic religions, they tend to believe it's their divine right to be in control over the environment or world.
Christianity also believes in something known as the rapture, which is the belief that in the final fight between God and the devils, followers of God will rise in the sky and meet him. Would their future prediction affect why they aren't too concerned about the environmental crisis?
That would make a lot of sense. If they're already expecting the end of the world, why would they have any motivation to try saving it if they're believing it's going to end?
Actually, Preston also talks about that in Torchology of Religion and the Environment. She explains end world beliefs and how if humans are believing in a prophesized end to the world, they're more likely to be less concerned towards the threat of climate change.
How has Abrahamic religion been brought into discussions of the environment, or more specifically, environmental justice?
Harvard University, over 20 years ago, started the discussion on issues involving religion and ecology, and now Yale has continued these discussions, and the Forum on Religion and Ecology aims to go deeper into understanding the relationship between religious worldviews and environmental issues. They do their best to promote scientific discussion between the two fields.
I actually read about that. I believe on the Yale 4 website page, they explain their goal. They say, to explore how the Abrahamic traditions impact the ways in which humans perceive and interact with nature, and the potential to translate those perceptions and interactions into positive social and ecological action.
There has actually been some push from scholars to make religion and ecology a recognized field of study because of their strong connection to one another and religion's strong influence on people.
It is becoming important that we as people come to some agreement or compromise on how to slow climate change, and it's looking like it will have to be with the Christians because they have the largest voice in this discussion.
I think it's not only Christians, but all the Abrahamic religions collectively have a profound influence on the environmental crises because of their enormous reach and control across the globe.
Overall, although the Abrahamic religions have key differences in beliefs, they still stand to bring about the most impact to the environment based on their views. Christianity, being the most widely spread or practiced religion in the world, has more power in the discussion and environmental justice. Based on beliefs in the creation story in the Old Testament, most Christians have a predetermined belief of being above the world in overall hierarchy.
They also have prophesied beliefs about the end of the world, which influences Christians more, with not being as concerned about the climate crisis because they don't want to save something that's already going to be destroyed. Once again, thanks for listening, and join us on our next episode where we dive into Native American cultures and their relationship to the environment.